Hi
Hey, Mike.
there. Hi there. I guess my room is a little bit dark, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna make you the host,
yeah.
Patrick.
How you doing, Patrick?
Good, good. How are you?
Good, good.
Hi,
I'm
everybody.
How's it going?
doing fine.
How's my audio?
It's okay. I hear you.
Okay. Well, we have 4 people in, and there's Thomas.
Mr. T.
Hi, Thomas.
He doesn't hear you.
Mr. Weller.
Hi there. Is Alex around?
I just pinged him. I'm gonna ping him again.
Okay.
Just again, how you doing, buddy?
Good, you?
With a gin tonic in my hand.
Oh, I'm poorly prepared.
Wow, I'm jealous.
Hello, Patrick.
Hey, how are you, Thomas? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
I figure alcohol is a good way of going about dealing with things these days. So,
Absolutely.
Well, if he does not, if we're missing our guest, we can also talk about other interesting things in the market. You know, you never.
Or talk about the guest.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the guest. That's right. I just pinged him again, and let's see. I'll try him on Skype.
hi, Marguerite.
How you doing?
I'll evade that question and say, will this be the format where in the future we'll be like this? Like, how many people can we actually have, and will there be a limited number of people, or what's the?
We can go up to 100.
Oh wow, okay, brilliant.
Yep.
I think, I'm not sure, but I thought I heard somewhere you can go up to 25 images, depending on screen and stuff like that, but 100 in the meeting.
Yeah, 100 participants. I'm not sure about the screen. Yeah.
Tim was saying he was going to come in the conversation as well. I'm not sure if he's.
Yeah, John was going to come in as well.
Okay.
You hear back from Rob?
Yeah, he can't make it. He's actually got a meeting with some investors there. Speak of the devil.
Mr. McGoy. How you doing?
Yes, sir. Well, people are coming in. Let me just ping him and see if I can get him on email. I've been sending him emails all day and pinging him on WhatsApp and etc.
So you're going to mute the rest of us and just keep the 3 of you guys online?
I can mute everybody if they would like to be muted.
I would leave it for now until.
I was gonna leave that.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, John,
well, you know, while we're waiting for Alex, I hope that he joins us. Is there any pressing question that anyone wants to talk about in terms of the business?
Yeah. Can you predict the future?
No, I can't. But there are a lot of interesting things going on. One of the most interesting things is that people are starting to get interested in, you know, what is going to happen after the WHO goes ahead with rescheduling cannabis, which is going to be interesting. Because if the WHO goes ahead with the rescheduling in December, that is going to put, I say, certainly the American market is going to be very interesting. I think the rest of the world is going to be less impacted because they're looking at the medical side of everything. But the difference is that if the WHO reschedules it as a Schedule 2, then how is that going to affect the American recreational market? That's a big question.
Can we backtrack maybe just for those that aren't as up to date with what that all means, Margaret, for what's going to happen in December, what's supposed to happen in March, if I'm not believe, but and how significant that is?
Actually, hold on a second. I think Alex is joining us. I did. Hold on a second.
Have you made Mike the host yet? Mike Patrick, not Mike.
I have made Patrick the host. I have indeed.
Okay.
Let me go ahead. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can. Hold on one second.
Patrick, where are you right now?
Barcelona.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No. You guys stayed in phase 2.
We're in this. Yeah, we're not even in phase 2 yet. We're in the city, so it's only parts of the country that have moved forward.
Yeah. On Monday, you guys are phase 2, right?
Yeah.
How about you guys? Sorry.
Things are definitely opening up. Things are, the cafes have started to put tables out, so things are slowly starting to happen.
I was in a restaurant yesterday, and I was amazed how full it was. And the majority of people were not wearing masks. The service personnel was wearing masks, but to the point that I felt a bit uncomfortable. People walking right behind me, very close to the entrance, and it's hard to eat with the mask on. We went there because we wanted to meet a few people, but it's quite interesting how different it is across the world. How is it in London and in Toronto?
Miguel?
Yeah, John. How is it in London? Can't hear you. You're on mute. Okay.
For some reason,
We're
John.
gonna have to do lip reading.
John, you're on mute.
Mike, how is it in Toronto?
It's still early stages, right? They've extended the state of emergency until June 30th. They're just talking about now maybe opening up patios for people. They've been doing takeout for the longest time. I'm sure you guys saw all the crazy uproar about Trinity Bellwoods Park and all the young kids just going there and not caring. The cases in Ontario have been pretty steady around 300-400.
Okay.
Pretty much the rest of the country has come off, aside from Quebec. So Ontario,
Okay.
Quebec are the problems. Vancouver's really dropped off. I mean, Carrie's family in Alberta, they don't even, it's like it's not even registering for them what's going on. So it's pockets. And so they're going really slow. And I think people are pretty respectful generally, but obviously the younger they are, the less they care about it, to be honest, unless they're forced.
I got a picture today from a friend for the demonstrations in Vienna, and they're touting 50,000 people crammed into one space.
Really?
I'm sure all the demonstrations are going to cause a big spike.
Yeah.
Just a matter of time, not when.
Yeah.
I mean, they're shoulder to shoulder, 50,000 shoulder to shoulder. I mean, they may be wearing masks, but obviously, we'll see a spike.
And in the States, you see there a lot are not, but.
So a little bit of update. So Alex is joining us. He just had to, he was digging through his email. He apologizes. So he just sent me a little bit of whoopsie. But anyway, so Frankfurt feels almost normal. It's very strange. Everything is opened up. There aren't a lot of protests. But anyway, Gunter, welcome. I love Guernsey is with us. We're waiting for Alex. He's coming in momentarily. But anyway, to go back to the question about the WHO, right? So the WHO has been booting this question about what to do with the rescheduling of cannabis. And to Thomas's point, they booted it about a week before they declared the COVID pandemic a global pandemic. But everything that I've been hearing and seeing so far seems to indicate that they are not going to reschedule it again. So that is a good thing, I guess. But the question is, what is going to happen as a result of that? I mean, what is, for example, Europe going to do in terms of then not only, I guess, rescheduling it or opening up the markets, but then how is the European Union going to move forward with recreational, which is also coming really quickly? I mean, Luxembourg is going to go online hopefully in the next year or so. So if, cannabis has been rescheduled as a Schedule 2, then where does that leave recreational use?
Where does that leave recreational use?
Go ahead.
Where does that leave recreational use?
That's a very good question. I mean, on the CBD side, they very well, I mean, they may reschedule or, deschedule CBD, which would put the whole question about what kind of animal is this in Europe firmly in the hands of the regulators, who have gone a bit. I mean, I don't know how much people are aware of what's been going on with novel food, but the regulators in Brussels, with a non-binding agreement, have decided to go ahead and make not only the flower, but everything that's extracted from the leaves novel food. Novel, even though this is a plant that's been used in Europe for thousands and thousands of years. So I would assume that what they're going to do is then they're going to stick the entire plant, no matter what kind of cannabinoid comes from it, into the novel food category if it's being used recreationally, which will of course have that huge upfront fee of $300,000 per every time you go for an application with anything in it.
Is this separate from what's going on in France with CBD?
Actually, it's connected, right? So yeah, the discussion in France is very, very important, because there's now at this point there's a lawsuit that that they have been leveling against the decision that they're not allowed to import this from another country, and that may upset the whole novel food discussion yet again. So, I mean, the question is, I think that the regulators are not happy about cannabis generally and are throwing everything that they possibly can into the mix to try and make it as expensive as possible and as difficult as possible for anybody to get into the market, which is, not unexpected. So we'll see. I mean, again, where the United States will be, if it changes all to a novel, if it all changes globally, good question. Welcome, Chris. Chris Nowell has joined us as well. We're just waiting on Alex. He's coming. So we're discussing a little bit about the cannabis. I mean, I think it's going to throw a lot of wrenches into the mix no matter what happens, because it's going to, to your point, I think it's going to leave it out there as what is recreational cannabis. I think in Europe, they're just going to say, okay, it's a new plant. And just like, CBD extraction, they're going to say that any cannabinoid coming from the plant is a novel food, and anything that is pressed from the leaves or the flowers is going to be novel, which is, certainly a setback. I mean, I would expect to see lawsuits and challenges on that front too, because this whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, cannabis has been used in Europe for thousands of years. It was brought here by the Scythians. So I don't know. I think the question is out, but I also think that they're going to try and find some regulatory slot to try and put it under. And I would suggest that they're probably going to try and shove it under novel food just to try and put it under somewhere. Because
who's opposing this? I mean, is this the pharmaceuticals, or who is against this?
Who is against what? The
recreational primarily.
In Europe.
Well, I think it's politicians. I think it's regulators don't really know where to put cannabis generally. I mean, if you look at what's happened on the regulatory front, just in terms of hemp, they have created a very sort of a rolling process where originally 3 years ago in 2017, it was just, it was a plant. If it was produced in Europe, then that was okay. and it had to go through other regulations. In other words, it had to be organically produced, it had to be labeled properly, and then they have changed progressively the regulations. So now, as actually Gunter and I were discussing the other day, the only thing that is not falling under this is hemp oil that is extracted from seeds, which is very strange. I mean, it seems like they're pressing back on this because they don't know what kind of animal cannabis is. And so they're going to make it go through these jumps. That said, I think that there are going to be industry members who are going to fight back. They're going to be coalitions. So right now, the European Industrial Hemp Association is trying to create a consortium and raise 2 million euros to create four formulations of CBD that will pass all of the regulatory muster everywhere. So if you're part of the coalition, then you don't have to pay, you know, 300,000 per application. You can pay between 10 and 50,000 to become part of the coalition, and then that way you're included in that. I think that they might go that way with the recreational side, but I mean, again, I just don't think they know what to do with it. So I think it's going to be up to the industry and coalitions within the industry to push back on this and sue and make a lot of noise. But I don't think that really anybody does know at this point.
And that's going to limit who can come to the table, right? I mean, because it's just going to be this big upfront price tag if you want to play.
That's right. That's right. And that's what they're clearly doing. I mean, that's what they did with the bid too here in Germany. I mean, they deliberately excluded every German hopeful in the first round of the bid, and then they got sued. And that's why they opened it up for coalitions and consortiums.
Hopeful like us.
Huh?
The hopefuls like us.
Well, that's the terrible thing, right? I mean, on one level, cannabis is no different than a tomato plant, right? I mean, it grows in the ground. It's been around forever. It literally is a weed. But I think that they just don't really know what to do with it. And right now, with all of the other things, I mean, I think that there might be a couple of game changers. One, I think that there is, as I have suspected, there is going to be some information that comes out that says that COVID, you know, that the plant can help you fight off retroviruses, right? Or maybe something that you can take if you have to take a COVID, I guess, regime if you get sick and you're given either the vaccine or medicine against it. I think that might change the equation again. But so far, from what I've seen here in Europe, certainly they just don't want to add it. They really just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to play, they don't want to add it, and they're going to put as many dollar signs and euro signs in front of it as possible to make sure that the only people who get in are people with big bucks. Because that's what happens.
Patrick asked you, you know, I mean, who's really against it? And you said politicians. So, I mean, politicians obviously just the front line. So, who, like, I guess the question is, who's behind the politicians? Is it pharma in Europe that's trying to, you know, block it from the small mom and pop shops, like what's happening in the United States and Canada, to get involved? And they just kind of want to, I mean, that's kind of what, you know, on the street level is what we're all kind of saying, right? It's like, oh, it's pharma that's blocking all this. But is it really pharma, or is it just politicians that are like catering to, you know, the grannies and grandpas that don't want to, you know, legalize, you know, potheads in Germany, you know, running wild, basically? I mean, or is it a mix of everything?
Hold on a second. It's regulators.
Yeah,
Alex is saying that he does not see the link, so I'm going to send it to him again.
Were you saying, Patrick? Sorry.
I mean, one of the interesting things that we see in Spain is, as much as people will say they want this, the existing organizations that are operating the way that they are operating, they don't want this to change. It's a cash business that's not taxed, you know, that is working for them. And, you know, when you talk to them, some of them are like, yeah, we'd love to have banking and we'd love to have insurance, we'd love to have more protection. But, you know, they also are looking at taxation and they're looking at compliance and things like that. So the infrastructure, whether you want to call it the black market or the alternative, whatever it might be, isn't in a big hurry for this to happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm. On a different note, while we're waiting for Alex, Patrick, can you tell us about CannaList, what you're actually doing?
Yeah, our intent is to sort of track and sort of support the ecosystem, right? So my background is I was a venture capitalist and understand that in order for startups and for a new industry to survive, you need an ecosystem, right? You need technology, you need investors, you need funding. And for us, what we're trying to do is there's a lot of disparate pieces within the cannabis ecosystem, and just trying to collect those pieces and map out those pieces so that we understand what are the distribution channels, we understand compliance, or through your tool we'll understand compliance, and you'll be one of obviously an important element to that, so that if somebody is coming to this industry, where do you even start? And that's sort of where we're hoping to help out, is sort of map all that to begin to understand that.
Okay. Marguerite, have you got it off to Alex, or should I try to send it to him?
I am sending it to him right now, but yeah, if you can, I mean, I sent it to him before, but he didn't see it, so I'm gonna just.
I could tell you my son knows how to use Zoom a hell of a lot better than any of us do.
Yeah, but we're learning.
Well,
better.
I mean, look, if we, I mean, I think it's nice to have this, and
That's great.
I think that this is an interesting sort of maybe happy hour conversation. I hope he's going to come in, and let's see if I can.
It's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience, and Alex is going to join us for a few minutes, and then and I think it's worth doing again. But to your point, I think the other question though is regulators. I mean, the conversations I've been having with people who are fighting this, like one of the companies that I've been talking to who's doing very well on the CBD side, has said that his problem is that the regulators in Brussels in particular just don't understand it. I mean, there is technically nothing against at this point, even with all of the fluff and the noise and everything else, that there is nothing that technically says that it is novel food. There are non-binding resolutions that are saying that this is what you're supposed to treat this plant as, but apart from that, there's really nothing. Ah, look, the guest of honor. We can't hear him. Let's see. Do we have to
Not yet. No, he's not muted. He just, his audio is connecting.
Hi, Alex. You're fine on our end.
Oh, I hear you now. Yep.
Rock and roll.
All right. Sorry, you guys. I really apologize about being late. I'm really sorry.
No worries. You're a busy man. You are a busy man.
Yeah.
I have microphone envy.
Yes. Yes. Don't we all?
Yeah.
How is everybody?
Doing well.
Good, Alex. Good to see you again.
Hey, Thomas. Good to see you, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few people in the meeting, which is great. And since you were rolling in, we thought we would just kick this off. So for those people who don't know who Alex is, Alex Rogers is, I would say, a pioneer in the industry who has been in it for 20 plus years internationally. And you're kicking off something kind of new next week. But apart from that, he has, I would say, as far, at least in my opinion, the most interesting, best international conference that I had ever been to on cannabis in general, that kicked off in 2017. And it's growing like gangbusters. You want to just talk to us a little bit about the digital conference that's coming up next week, and then we can bounce to something else?
Sure. 4 months ago, if you had told me we were doing a digital conference, I would have told you you're crazy. And of course, here we are now. And yeah, it's kind of an exciting thing. I said I never would do a digital conference because, you know, I'm such kind of an old-fashioned brick-and-mortar guy that I was just like, well, I'm going to stay. And, of course, we are going to do our brick-and-mortar events. They're all being rescheduled. Most of them are being rescheduled for the fall. But, you know, I just wanted to keep the ICBC patrons engaged. And they weren't engaged for a while. And everyone kind of wasn't engaged with anything. You know, the world was a bit disengaged unless you were talking about COVID, seemingly. So I did it, and I went for it, and I just figured, man, there's so many of these events out there, and it's already getting tired virtual events are already getting tired for everybody. And well, what do we do, you know, to make it different? And you know, all I did was, you know, I got some great speakers, obviously, but I also got a lot of famous cannabis superstars, if you will, that we're going to kind of interweave. We'll have interwoven, excuse me, in between the otherwise cerebral programming, to have like smoke breaks with Tommy Chong or Doug Benson or DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill or whatever. So I thought that was really important to bring little moments of levity to otherwise a cerebral conference. And lastly is we have a virtual exhibitor booth. So I never thought that was possible. So now we have virtual exhibitors, and there's just all types of new possibilities. I thought this was a very restrictive process, and after getting done, after endeavoring to do so, I realized that it is a restrictive process in one way, but it also is allowing for, there's also other opportunities that I didn't know existed also in terms of like access to people and the reach you might have, and all the possibilities of tools in your belt. You actually have some different tools that you wouldn't otherwise have just doing a brick and mortar event. So it's been a very interesting, arduous, and you know, eye-opening process.
So talk. I mean, how is it going to? I mean, obviously it's digital, right? It's virtual. But what are the cool things? I mean, I also saw you're going to have digital booths. You're going to have all sorts of interesting, interactive things. I mean, how are the booths going to work?
Yeah, so you know, we have a digital app on our brick and mortar events also that gets utilized quite a lot, and so it's basically that app that one would use even at a brick and mortar event, but it's a little bit more enhanced in that we have virtual exhibitorship, and it's really cool because you just go into the app and you see you have your boards to post. You can click live to watch. Live stream to watch programming. You can see who all the individuals that have signed up that you can connect with. And then you have the virtual exhibitorship, which is you just go into the exhibitorship, you see who's there, you want to click on someone. Each exhibitor has, you know, it depends on how much the exhibitors want. You know, they have the option to you know, be there live for you. They could just do a PDF. A lot of exhibitors will actually be there live for you. So if you want to, you can type chat with them, and then you can also get on and have a separate live chat with them if you want. So the vendors are there. I think we have about 100 vendors for the event, and you could just scan through the app, see them there, and talk to a vendor just like you would at a conference. They have products downloaded on their PDF files that you can look at and whatnot, and you can network directly with them right there. So it's the same, but it's not the same, you know.
Well, I think so. So what are you expecting to come out of this? I mean, is it sort of like a digital bump in the summer because we missed you in Berlin, or is it going to be a very, very different experience, do you think?
Digital bump in the summer. I kind of like that. I don't know, man. I think it's going to be a different experience. I'm hoping we're going to make it a good experience. You know, we have a lot of tech issues, you know, just to figure out that we've had to figure out. And so hopefully the tech part will go smoothly. I've seen a lot of conferences that haven't really gone smoothly and they've had tech problems. So I've hired the nerdiest minds I can find to make sure this tech goes smoothly. Otherwise, I actually think there's going to be a lot of networking. I think there will be a lot of people connecting, and of course, there's nothing like vis-a-vis, but we're going to have, I don't know how many people. It could be up to 1,500, 2,000 people of direct cannabis executives. There should be some fierce networking going on, part and parcel of what I think is a pretty entertaining program.
So I want to just bounce out from the conference just a little bit and talk about, just ask you a couple of questions about where do you see the industry going? I mean, obviously there's been global meltdown and disruption, but where do you see cannabis fitting into all of this?
Well, it's funny because I own for 11 years now, I've owned a medical marijuana clinic that I started and founded in Oregon, where I live. And I actually just wrote an article for a local paper here that talks about one of my businesses coming to a screeching halt and the other thriving. And the one that came to the screeching halt was the ICBC. Of course, we're now finally getting beyond that, doing the digital, getting our event scheduled for fall. But my medical marijuana clinic is booming. And there's a couple reasons for that. One reason is I think now, since legalization, my medical marijuana clinic is not what I would consider boomed. It's been a solid little business, right? And so now it's kind of booming because I think, it's a bit of a cumbersome process. They just made it telemedicine. So now my doctors can, on the phone, give them we call it a recommendation in the United States, not a recept or prescription. But just right on the phone. So we're not even Skyping patients. We can just do it right on the phone. Oh, you need your card, you need a renewal. I don't even need to see you. I just need to have some documentation and holler at you on the phone for 5 minutes. So they're coming out in droves because the process is less cumbersome. It costs the same, but a lot of people will now it used to be you could really make a few thousand extra bucks if you had your medical marijuana card, right? Or you could make a few extra pounds, if you will. You could grow more and whatever. And that's still true. You can grow more with your card, but really you might only save a few $100 a year. Well, that's a few $100 is a lot to some people right now. And so they're coming out of the woodwork to get their medical marijuana cards. So here's an example where a cannabis entrepreneur like me has two businesses, two different fields, if you will. And one of them came to a standstill and was very much disrupted, the ICBC, and the other thrived. So when it comes to the future of cannabis and, let's say, the COVID or, general disruption in society, I think cannabis is a winner in general when it comes to the disruption. I think ultimately it's going to be good. Not to mention, Marguerite, that what happened with the last recession we had was, let's be clear, all the cannabis activists were talking about legalizing cannabis because of the human, because it's the human, right? It's the human and civil thing to do, right? And after the recession, activists saw a huge window of opportunity in that they would focus on the economics of cannabis, and that's what would usher in legalization in different respective states in the United States. And that's exactly what happened. So in terms of cannabis policy reform, this shit is great for cannabis because this will only, this would be like, basically it's like, oh, cannabis should be legalized. Oh, but cannabis. And now people realize, oh shit, we got the COVID and we got this economic problem. We got this crap and this crap. Okay, I guess cannabis isn't so bad. Oh, we can make money off it. Okay. It was just a bunch of veneers anyway. We didn't really think cannabis was that bad. And so I think it's going to expedite the rapidity of change with regards to cannabis reform.
Well, that's what we were just talking about. We only have a couple more minutes, but we were also talking briefly about what's going to happen, in December. It's not likely that the WHO is going to punt it. again. But a lot of people have been concerned that if the WHO changes Schedule 2, and this is a very quick question because we've got like 4 minutes left.
Actually, we've moved to unlimited time, just so you know.
I'm sorry?
We've moved to unlimited time, just so you
Oh,
know.
we have. Okay, good. So we have you for a little bit
We're
more.
in no rush.
Okay, excellent.
Until they get bored.
Okay, well, okay. So the question is, so what happens in December? Let's say the WHO changes this to a Schedule 2. Will that really make a big difference in the United States, especially because I guess the United States is now out of the WHO?
Well, it never would have made a big difference in the United States specifically, whether we were in the WHO or out. It's kind of like you're on the bus or off the bus, huh? So it's we just don't give a shit about anything the UN does in our minds in America. You know, it's so funny because activists go to Europe and you go to Germany, they say, "Oh, Alex, we can't do this. We are under UN scrutiny for some treaty or whatever," and you're like, "What are you talking about? The UN? You know, we just as Americans, for better or for worse, anything the UN decides or does is not on our radar because we trump all that shit. Implementation is 90% of the law." Okay, so we're already seeing. Now, will it help if the UN says, okay, or reschedule cannabis or whatever it does? Yeah, it'll definitely help. But will it hinder in a big way if they don't? In Europe, it will a little bit. I'm sure of it. You know, in America, no, though, was what your question was. Right. Not at all.
Right. Well, because it's interesting because I was talking to, I guess it was one of the people at the NCIA who was really worried about it and thought that might be a disaster. You know, and certainly if Biden, for example, is coming out and saying, well, we're going to follow and do Schedule 2 and is not really committed to anything on this. But they were worried about, you know, what would happen if the United States moved sort of in concert with the WHO and said, okay, now we're going to change this to a Schedule 2. Where is that going to leave the recreational market? And actually, we were talking about that earlier. So if the world shifts and recognizes cannabis as a Schedule 2 drug, which is odd because, you know, the fake stuff, dronabinol, is a Schedule 3, where does that leave the recreational market?
Well, are you talking about in the nuance of if they do reschedule it, of then like certain patents can be invoked, or what do you?
Well, okay, so if the scheduling of cannabis becomes a Schedule 2 drug, right? Where does recreational fall? Right? And the same thing with novel food. It's like, okay, so if you put this drug or this plant in this medical bucket, in the United States, the shark has already jumped. And in Europe, what on earth are they going to call it in Luxembourg when Luxembourg moves ahead in a year?
I see what you're saying. So I have this theory that for Europe, so for America, it doesn't matter. The recreational's out of the bag. The feds are, you know, if anything, you got to watch out for big pharma and the big multi-corps coming in to take over cannabis once they reschedule it. So that's the kind of the thing that we're all worried about, is all the devil's in the details. All that glitter's not gold. You know, it's already de facto descheduled in America, you know, by like I said, implementation being 90% of the law. But for Europe, it's different. You guys are less wild west than us, and I'm pretty much convinced that when recreational becomes legal in Europe in whatever regard or respect or wherever it does, that it's going to be much less regulated than medical. So I see medical as being uber regulated in Europe, or even CBD, right? But when this recreational thing comes out, it won't even be regulated, barely. And the reason I say that is because every model that's proposed for legalization in Europe is seemingly or partially based on this social club model. Like when you talk about doing microcosmic as far as I know, when you talk about doing microcosmic examples of legalization in Germany in the northern liberal cities like Hamburg or Berlin or Düsseldorf or so, and so weiter, then you're talking about these little basically social clubs. Or can there be this many members? Or in Switzerland, how they're doing it right now. So I think it's a funky little irony that they're going to uber regulate medical and barely regulate recreational at all.
Well,
comparatively
like we were just talking about this earlier. I think that they're going to stick it under novel food. I think they're going to say, okay, the plant itself is novel. It's never been used. So therefore, we're going to make everybody who wants to use it in anything pay a registration fee. You don't see that that is a danger? Because if they're doing it for CBD, why wouldn't they do it for any other cannabinoid?
Yeah, because they really, because like I said, when they start doing this legalization model in Switzerland and in the northern cities of Germany,
Right.
it's not based on regulation. They're not even talking about supply chain yet. They're just talking about the social experiment, as far as I kind of can delve into it.
Yeah.
And so I see it as this disconnect almost, Marguerite, that they're not going to, almost like a dissonance, a cognitive dissonance in that, cigarettes, it's alcohol, it's recreational, weed.
Right. So we've been talking for a while. Does anyone have any questions? Because this is supposed to be an interactive chat here. Nobody? All right. Well, I'm going to continue to question Alex. So, where do you see? I mean, I think this is interesting that you're seeing that you think that it's not going to be regulated in Europe as much as the medical side. So you think that honestly, in places like Germany, they'll allow social clubs? And what would they? How would they?
Well, I don't know, but everything I've read about their the greens or what they're proposing or this experiment, these experiments in these northern European cities, and when you look at what's been proposed in Kreuzberg in Berlin or in Hamburg, it's it's a social experiment rather than one in bureaucracy, it seems. And so I just haven't seen anything that, in fact, I've been surprised about this for years now. I've thought about this and thought, well, it's such an ironic thing that medical CBD so uber regulated, but then when they talk about putting legalizing, you don't see them going down the bureaucratic rabbit hole, and every example I've seen is social club model. Will that change I'm sorry, go ahead.
But do you think that will change once the money starts to flow, right?
Yeah,
because when we looked at Colorado, and all of a sudden, there was this huge tax base that wasn't there before, and all of a sudden all the other states kind of popped up and said, "Oh, wow, we didn't think of it that way." And I think that I agree with you, when it's sort of off the radar, it's fine, but once it starts to become successful and some money starts to flow, I think that will change.
I was just going to say that we just have to worry about. I agree completely. We just have to worry about like big pharma coming in, because once the money, once that machine starts to prime, then like we've seen in Oregon or Colorado, is we've seen a consolidation of the industry, and we've seen bigger money come in. In Europe, it's already kind of more pharma based on the medical tip, and so I really see that it's going to be some golden years for cannabis in Europe before that takes place. So maybe we've got, from when you start to have the first model in Germany to when it starts to be kind of usurped by the big business model in of itself, of course, and they will lobby for more regulations, because bigger businesses will be able to scale and handle regulations, right? And they'll lobby for them like it's a great thing for the cannabis industry. We've got about 4 or 5 years, Marguerite, I think, of some really golden times for when that starts to when it gets uber regulated. Maybe 4 to 5 years where it's going to be this kind of gray area, but it's going to be totally legal. And for me, it's not. I haven't sold any weed since I've been to prison for it in Germany. So I don't plan to do that personally. But as a personal smoker, looking at it from a patient's perspective or just a smoker's perspective, it's going to be a great interim time, I feel.
Well, I mean, this is my question though. If it switches, let's say in Luxembourg, and then what would stop the big Canadians, for example, who have spent huge amounts of money trying to get in, who's saying, okay, well, you have to put this through something like a novel food application where you have to spend a lot of money because they already have an in the market. I mean, it could be that. The flip side is I've already seen, like hemp rum in the local grocery store, which is very strange.
Yeah, I mean,
Those are the German cowboys.
I mean, I just think that Europe has a smoking culture. They know what time it is. This coffee shop model is a preferred model for Europe, social model or club model or whatever. And I think you'll see the Canadians probably, I mean, that's a great point. They're already there. They're already kind of the big pharma of the industry right now. But I do think that the Canadians' power is waning,
Right.
and they just had too much too quick. They didn't know what to do with it. They kind of fucked it up. And I don't think that voice is as strong as it used to be.
Well, this is to your point, for example, when you go down to, I go down to my local smoke shop and they've got CBD extract in there. They're not worried about novel food. They're not worried about any of this stuff. And it's not even labeled. So, what would be the difference of being able to go into your local smoke shop and getting certainly extract and being able to put it in your little puffer?
Yeah, well, I mean, look at Switzerland, and you just go into the bodega and get your sack of CBD flower, and it's not regulated and it's completely safe. I mean, I think, yeah, it's super fascinating to see how it plays out and to see Europe being more regulated in one way, but then less in another. And I think recreational control is going to be one of those ways you see less for all the aforementioned reasons we said. But there are the caveats also.
So anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Talking about edibles, where is the U.S. sitting on edibles, and what do you know about edibles in Europe?
Not much. I mean, edibles, I don't know much about edibles in Europe, actually. I don't, as for the US, when you say edibles, you mean like the regulation of them, or?
Overall, which are there markets that are open for edibles, or is it still, okay.
Yeah, they're open for, where are you, Martin?
I'm in Germany, but
you must have an American parent with an accent like that.
yeah, Canadian.
There you go. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know in my state, Oregon, we're pretty robust. I mean, the only thing they do is they limit the they limit how potent a medical can be. So that's one thing they've done, is they've taken dosages down to, in a lot of places, to 10 milligrams, or even, what is it, 5 in Canada, Marguerite, and it's stupid. It's ridiculous. And so but medibles are a huge market. We saw them over 10 years go from almost not so much flower to then take a huge part of the market. Europe is a smokers based market, right? So it's a little bit different. They like flower in Europe. They don't, because they all smoke with tobacco, or 95%, right? Yeah. So it's a real smoking culture. So the psychographics on who's smoking what, when, and where, and why are completely different. So I don't think medibles are going to be as, just like vape pens aren't as big in Europe as they are in America, because you're smoking it pure. There's no tobacco and weed mixed with it. I mean, that would be a great European invention. And the same things for medibles. I don't think medibles are going to take off in Europe like they will like they have in America. People like to have their medibles in America, and they like to they love their medibles and love to chill out. But in Europe, I just don't see it market-wise. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on in every market, but in terms of the psychology of the market, medibles won't be as big in Europe. Of course, under medical auspices, they are, because there's more medical application for ingesting it orally, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of recreation, flower is king in
Europe.
In Europe.
I was going to say, I think that the difficulty that the CBD market is running into on the novel food side here is going to be there for the recreational side as well. So I think that it's probably going to end up like you have your smokables that are sent to your smoke shop. They're going to not sell it, or they might sell it in grocery stores. I mean, I was really shocked to see hemp vodka or hemp gin or whatever it was, rum, in a local grocery store. And I think, to your point, Alex, I think it may fall into that strange, on the recreational side, they may just say, okay, you have to be over 18 or over 21, and then stick it in something else. I mean, that, because it's just so difficult. Right now, it costs 300,000 euros to get a novel food application for CBD. And the regulators in Brussels have made everything that is extracted from the plant, from the bud itself, from the flower, or from the leaves, novel food. That's where this is going. So to get around that, to your point, there might just be like the smoking clubs, or you might have to go to a special head shop.
Right.
But I don't think it's gonna. I just don't think it's gonna go the same way that people are expecting it to go, because I don't think that the average person is gonna put up for that. I mean, it just.
That's right. That's exactly right. The average person is not gonna put up with it, and so if they want to try to puppet master this thing from Brussels or Strasbourg or Luxembourg City, they're gonna lose.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, Alex. So, I mean, it's sometimes hard to see the things from when you're inside the box, but I always admirably consider myself an ICBC groupie, because I've been there since the beginning. I haven't missed a single conference yet.
You have, brother.
Because they're so fantastic, and the parties, et cetera, and the great people that are there, because it's really just a fantastic atmosphere and the best networking there is. So like hats off to you.
Thanks,
Now, that all said, how do you see the momentum going forward? I mean, obviously we've had this little hiccup now, a major hiccup with COVID, but I had this feeling. I remember in 2017 when you had your first conference in Berlin. It was this euphoria. It just felt like in Europe we were just like we were at the right place at the right time. And then 2018 and then 2019, there was always a little bit. I saw you in Zurich last year. How do you feel that your conference and all the bazillions of other conferences have come out because of what you've done? Let's face it. I mean, everyone saw, oh, look what Alex is doing. We can all do it as well. How do you feel that is going to continue pressuring, legislators in Europe to, go forward with this? Because I'm a little bit concerned with this hiccup, and now they've got more important things, quote unquote, on their mind. How are you going to keep that up?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because we do pride ourselves on kind of getting into the zeitgeist of whatever respective area we're at and helping push drug policy reform in whatever regard we might be wanting it. I like I said, I think in times like this of peril and despair, I think cannabis, there's a window for cannabis to be talked about and to be considered, to be more realistically considered during these times. Now, I see what you're saying. The events have gone away. Everything's gone away. Cannabis could be looked upon as a non-issue just as easily as it could be looked at as a pertinent one, right? So, so for example, I don't know the answer. That's a great question. And what I would say is that the next time we have an event in any place, in the past when these things have happened, I've known that we've had an opportunity. So I think that we can create that air, because what I do, as you well know, is I look for creating narratives. And then what I do is I spin it, I wag the dog, right? So then I say, okay, so for example, let's say I'm looking at new dates in late September for Berlin right now, all the social distancing shit set up, and we can create the narrative through our media, through our network. I mean, that's how it's done these days. So we come to Berlin end of September, and then we start having a media campaign, let's say in early September, late August, early September. And what we do is we push, just like they did back then, the economics of it. So this is wherein lies, wherein lies the crux of what to push if we want to keep this in the forefront of people's minds, right? So we push it, we put pressure on people, we put pressure on politicians, we put stories out, whether it's in the Bild or the Süddeutschland Zeitung or the Tagesspiegel or whatever it is. We get these things out there in the mainstream media about cannabis, and why it's now more important than ever to latch on to cannabis. So it's really incumbent upon, like it's a wormhole right now, and it's incumbent upon us to just manifest this narrative and get this media out, and it could hinder us as much as it could help us. But for me personally, I see it, Thomas, as an opportunity for us to slam that narrative, to have my PR firm and I sit down and be like, okay, boys, here we are. Everything's changed, right? So what do? And if what's past is prologue, then we will see cannabis take 2 steps forward here. Instead, it might have a half step backwards somewhere along the line, but this is a really positive thing for cannabis, because generally, for the redheaded stepchild, he already has he's already got a bad deal, right? So cannabis already has a bad deal. It's already like we need something to really just break and pop it. So it's already too rigid, and now we see crack, and there's a fissure, and with that fissure we can really rally the people, rally the media, rally the narrative, and bring in change. It sounds a little hoity or pie in the sky, like hippie, but what can I say? I'm on the West.
Well, no, I mean, I think to the point of creating a narrative, you definitely did. I mean, the bid was absolutely, certainly was affected by your conference, for sure. But on that note, in terms of creating a narrative, first of all, I want to just thank you for being here. I think you have fans everywhere in this room. I also wanted to just sort of put out that, beyond the conference itself, I mean, there are different areas for the business to go. I mean, for example, the reason that we started CannaClear was to try and create a narrative for people who could actually start to say, okay, I want to deal with other people who are sort of in this space and are getting certified and want to go ahead with a business and continue that business all year round. But I also wanted to just say thank you to Patrick, who is also, I think, doing a great job in terms of trying to create an ongoing narrative for listing your conference as well as, the other ones, and trying to bring people together. I think you have the first jobs list I've seen in Europe, which is pretty awesome. And that's the idea of this, is that we want to create an ongoing conversation. But again, thank you, Alex, for being a part of this. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. We want to continue this in 2 weeks. And in fact, we're going to have a speaker from House of Green to come in. He's a very interesting guy. He's also another American, but a grower. And that's why we want to continue to do this. So thank you so much, Alex, for being a part of our first one.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. It was really groovy. Apologize, I was late again. That I didn't know so many people were on it. I felt even stupider then. But if anybody wants free tickets to the event on Tuesday, just hit me or Margarita up, and I'll send you guys a link. Okay.
Okay.
And I've put the details on the event in the chat section, so there's a link there to get to the website. It gives you the 10 to 4 time frame, so all that's available in chat as well.
Thanks, Patrick. And just hit me. Anybody need free tickets for anyone? Just hit me or Marguerite up. We'll send you a link.
Okay.
Now, what are you thinking about
Okay.
back in Europe? Like, when are you gonna have like a face-to-face, like human conference then, so I can plan that in?
September, we're looking at.
This one.
I'm dealing with late September now, and I've got one in Switzerland, and I've got one in Zurich. We're gonna do, and then we'll do one in Berlin, and of course I'm getting the Berlin online, so I'm hoping late September. I'm in a situation with my hotel right now, so got a couple of my lawyers involved, so it's a little precarious right now, but I'm doing it. Man, you can't keep a good man down. And I got to tell you, y'all, when we have that event in Berlin, there's so much demand for it right now. We might not get as many Americans flying over or whatever, but the European demand for it is absolutely off the chart right now.
You've got your fans. You've got your fans. It's a great conference.
People are missing it. People are
Americans are overrated.
Yeah, really great. Yeah.
Americans are what?
But they're overrated. You know what I mean?
Americans are overrated.
I think so personally. I mean, I'm waiting. I had to cancel I spend every summer in my wife's home country in Slovenia, and I'm actually this close to emigrating to Slovenia. So we'll see.
Well, pre-immigration, Alex, it was lovely to see you from Oregon. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and we will be back in 2
guys.
weeks. All right.
Okay.
All the best. Have a great
Cheers,
day,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend.
Ciao.